Story 1. I like to stay informed. I am tired of American politics appearing in places where they are not relevant. Story 2. I even hear it in my country's daily news report. A bankrupt country, the poorest in the European Union. A country with fundamental public sector problems, such as the inability to fire public employees even if they do not show up for work for years, yet still pay them. Public services are unaudited and there are no consequences if the public breaks the law or fails to deliver on time. This is a country with a fundamental corruption problem. Still, instead of reporting on these problems and how to fix them, a large part of the news focuses on United States politics, as if we are a puppet state of the United States. Story 3. I am tired of the immature behavior that occurs. Stop the playground name-calling and blaming others. Focus on solutions. Have some class, unite people, and stop creating division. Story 4. American here. It is a presidential election year, so it is not stopping. Story 5. I have been tired of it for years, but at the same time, I have come to realize that I cannot afford to ignore it anymore. Story 6. I left all the subreddits that turned into political advertisements. I also unfollowed anything political on Facebook. If I want to know about a candidate, I research them directly. If I am interested in a story, I try to find it on the British Broadcasting Corporation. Story 7. I am tired of seeing how social and mass media have distorted things to an almost Game of Thrones level of confusion. No politician is ever going to be a saint, but now it has become just another set of topics for them to manipulate for their own purposes. They do it all. Take things out of context, bait interview subjects, demonize whoever they want in the moment, glorify whoever they choose, omit information, and outright lie. Nothing will ever be done about it because mass media is too wealthy to be stopped and social media is beyond control. Story 8. Yes, I am in the United Kingdom and do not care at all, yet it is everywhere. Story 9. I am an American and I am sick of it. The election campaign is unnecessarily long, and I think that is part of the reason why it becomes such a defining part of many people's lives. It literally is the sole reason some people exist, which is beyond pathetic. Story 10. I work in sales and it is all people want to talk about and I am so burnt out on it. I am in Texas, so I hear pro-Trump talk literally 3 times a day, 6 days a week. If you think it is bad online, just imagine sitting in front of someone who has asked you to come to their home to help them fix their 30-year-old house they have invested nothing into during the 30-plus years they have lived there, just to complain the whole time about how they could not afford these necessities because of President Biden's economy. Story 11. I am so sick of it. I would rather have a 5-hour conversation about the weather, and I live somewhere with just one season. Story 12. Sick of it since when? Are we talking now or 10 years ago? Story 13. I would be less tired of politics if everything were not so sensationalized and clearly biased. Every story has a perspective. Story 14. All the content you see here on Reddit is not about politics at all. It involves mudslinging towards opponents without analyzing their policies in good faith. I am tired of all the manipulation and am glad my country is not that far gone. Story 15. As an American, I am extremely tired of hearing it. I cannot go a single day without being overwhelmed by it. Story 16. I am really passionate about fighting against fascism, so I will closely follow any election in the West where fascists have a chance of winning. The election in the United States is all over the media, and I am happy to keep watching it. Story 17. Americans make politics toxic by idolizing candidates or the president as if they truly care about your 9-to-5 working life. Story 18. Not as much now that there is a candidate who seems like they could do a reasonably good job. But I understand that it could be tiring for people outside the country. Story 19. I cannot describe how much. And Donald Trump. I dislike that I have to read that name in every other post. Story 20. I only hear about it on Reddit since Americans like to talk about it so much. Story 21. Not American and not tired of it. I love seeing the pictures, the drama, the clapbacks, the stupidity, and hypocrisy of certain characters. It is like a political soap opera. Story 22. As someone who is terminally online, not at all. It is basically my second job these days. I do feel for those who come to Reddit to disconnect from their lives for a little bit and maybe try to laugh at a meme or learn something new just by scrolling. Seeing something about politics when you intend not to engage can pull you back into thinking about your everyday life. I think social media can be healthy when consumed in moderation. It is a way to pull ourselves out of everyday stress. Seeing political content on major subreddits that are not necessarily supposed to have it can be exhausting. On the other hand, as a Democrat, I find getting the word out about our choices this November extremely important, especially with what is at stake. However, the last thing I want to see is people totally disconnecting from politics and ending up not voting because they are experiencing fatigue about it all. Story 23. I'm not interested because I find it interesting. However, I don't want it to be everywhere. Why am I being recommended Jordan Peterson's subreddit telling me how much they love Donald Trump? Story 24. Not at all, I am into it, original poster. I can definitely see why people are, especially when it bleeds into other subreddits. Story 25. Regardless of whether you like it or not, what happens in the United States affects the world. Stay tuned. Story 26. Well, considering they affect my life directly, not at all. Story 27. I live in the United States, so it is likely to happen anyway. If you live far from the United States and hear about the challenges we are facing right now, I am sorry. Story 28. Very well. Before anyone complains about the upcoming election, political posts are acceptable. I am tired of seeing repetitive performative content. Yes, thank you for the reminder to vote. You are the 300th person to do so consecutively in the same subreddit. Oh, a picture of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. It looks very similar to the one posted 400 times before. What is the point of comments when people do not respond to agree but instead create entire posts repeating the same information? Story 29. Probably not as sick as all the Americans are, but yeah, it would be nice if the entirety of Reddit and social media did not always need to circle around to this. Even in unrelated tweets or forum discussions, you will see people bringing up Republican or liberals as though it is an insult or a retort. It does not even make sense for most people on Earth and is definitely out of context when politics are not involved in the discussion at hand. I have come to learn that political identity is extreme for Americans apparently, and consumes most of their everyday speech patterns, conversations, and way of life. Story 30. It must be nice to be able to be tired of politics. As a member of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community, I cannot afford to ignore politics when my rights and my very existence are political. Story 31. I do not want to hear anything about Donald Trump for the rest of my life. Even if his heart gives out, it will be one of his children. This will go on and on. Story 32. I just want this election season to be over so I do not have to be constantly nervous about whether my immediate future is ruined or not. Story 33. I am morbidly fascinated. Watching America devolve into a dystopian state is like watching one of my legs wither away from gangrene. Story 34. As an American, I would like real news. There is mild propaganda from both sides. If you cannot admit that you are biased, it is an objective fact that the media is biased, especially on social media platforms. The former president is dishonest, but many of the posts that get upvoted by thousands are baseless accusations that are essentially just headlines. I do not need to elaborate on the right wing. Look at any right-wing fear-mongering social media page. They are full of screenshots of poor-quality articles with thousands of comments. No one is reading the details or facts, just expressing anger. This country is in trouble. The elite are winning. Why do people making $25 per hour let someone making $2,500 per hour say that people making $15 per hour are to blame? Story 35. I am not tired of hearing about politics. I find politics to be quite interesting. I am tired of hearing about Donald Trump and his politics specifically. Story 36. As an American, it is constant and I am sick of it. I have known who I am going to vote for a while, and aside from some extremely major conspiracy being uncovered, I know what I am doing. They make this a year-long deal anymore, and it is not necessary with communications as good as they are now. Story 37. I am mostly sick of people talking about how sick they are of politics. In fact, I see more of those than actual political posts. Story 38. I am sure most people around the world do not care much but find it very funny that the country of freedom cannot vote for whom they want, and that your former president was speaking like a slow 12-year-old child. It is like watching The Simpsons. Story 39. If it was just politics, I think I could tolerate it, but at this stage, it seems to be another religious war. I am sick of it. So much for separation of church and state. Madness. Story 40. I live in a solid blue state. I do not have television, so I often stream live sports. Sometimes I have to tune into another broadcast to hear their local commercials. The primary season in red states was shocking. Some of the people putting out commercials could not be serious, but there they were, totally serious and trying to tell the public how much more they support Donald Trump than their competition. Good luck out there. I will be at Moe's. Story 41. Canadian here. I have had to reduce my Instagram follows significantly because many posts focus on United States politics. Story 42. The subreddit bumper stickers has gone downhill. Political propaganda at its finest. Story 43. I am American. I dislike it. I just want to pet my dogs and watch funny animal videos. Story 44. I escaped a developing country with decades of political unrest and riots, and then I moved to the United States. I am sick and tired of it. I had enough of it in my home country. Honestly, protests here are more like parties, but I just want to avoid seeing and talking about politics for the next 10 years. Thank you. Story 45. I feel this. I don't see how people can become so invested in a political party. You would think that we are smart enough by now to see that political parties push propaganda to discredit each other and divide us. People will literally disown their friends and family over opposing thoughts for a president who does not even know they exist. Does anyone not find it strange that all the political ads are more focused on making the other side look bad rather than making themselves look good or explaining how they plan to improve the economy? How about the fact that they ask the American people for donations to fund their campaigns? Meanwhile, most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and those in Congress are making more money annually than doctors and lawyers. I hope one day we realize we are more than a right wing and left wing. We are all Americans, and we should lean on common sense over popularity or the feeling of wanting to be loyal to a group. I am proud to say that I will never waste my golden years by going to pep rallies. Story 46. American here. November literally cannot come soon enough. Story 47. I just read an article by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation that said if Australians had to vote for either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, it would be a landslide victory for Kamala. I am not tired of hearing about American politics. At this very moment, I think it is fascinating. Story 48. I am only irritated when the orange one gets so much attention for bad behavior. I would not mind some serious discussions or debates, but his constant lies, infantile temper tantrums, and name-calling are asinine. I cannot understand how anyone can support someone like him, who also happens to be a felon. What are people thinking? Story 49. I am much more tired of the advocates who ignore reality and pretend nothing is happening. Story 50. I receive about a dozen pieces of political campaign mail every week. None explain what the candidate supported by the sender will do. They only talk about other candidates. Also, I will be grateful when the presidential election is called. I hope Trump loses just to see the complete chaos and the biggest tantrum that follows. His supporters will only cry. They will not attack the Capitol twice and remain standing. Story 51. My rights as a woman are now less than they were when I was born, so I am not well until this injustice has been corrected. Story 52. As a former political scientist who long ago grew tired of asking, "And what does that word mean to you?" about anything in politics, I have completely unplugged. Most Americans do not understand the system. Fewer understand the dynamics and institutions behind it, and I would say less than 1% make informed choices when voting. We are doomed as a late-stage empire more fascinated with its own reflection than by the fire in the building all around us. Story 53. The situation barely changes whether a Republican or Democrat is in office. It is always the same. Story 54. Yes, it is exhausting listening to two groups talking negatively back and forth, telling lies and manipulating the country with propaganda, begging for votes so they can make themselves richer. Story 55. I live in America, so I am invested in knowing what is going on. I would love for it to be peaceful, but until Donald Trump and the Make America Great Again movement are eliminated, I will not be at peace. Story 56. If you have cancer, you check every chance you get to see if it will be terminal. Story 57. I muted our slash pics, our slash clever comebacks, and 2 or 3 other subreddits for spamming all day, every day per Democrat propaganda posts. The users are now on a Call Them Weird campaign. US politics is like a high school cafeteria fight. Dude, come on, you're weird. I am the smartest, Trump. Look, guys, it's the weirdo. No, you are a weirdo. It's ridiculous. Story 58. I am sick and tired of the Harris Wall spam and propaganda on Reddit. I have muted most of the subreddits. I am wondering if it will get better after November, but I feel like it will not. I guess I will stick around some subreddits. In general, I should stop wasting time here. Story 59. It is unfortunate that many of the people voting lack understanding, which leads to constant reminders to influence the crowd to one side or another. Story 60. I am tired of seeing the Harris artificial intelligence bots. It is not real engagement. Story 61. As an American, I will not be as sick as I will be under a 2024 Donald Trump presidency. Story 62. Not as ill as I will be in the future if Donald Trump wins. I will gladly trade a few more months to avoid hearing about it again for 4 years. Story 63. Politics have been problematic since the 1800s. Both major political parties today are filled with self-involved individuals. It is impossible to avoid figures like Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris was not even elected by her party. It is the same issues with different faces. Congress and the Senate delay decisions on important matters so they do not have to pass laws that would improve conditions for the American people. Older lawmakers, often in their 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s, make laws without fully understanding the issues. Implementing term limits for Congress and the Senate would be the best way to bring in new leadership. Most people commenting on politics do not understand the topics. They only repeat sound bites from their preferred news sources. The extreme left and extreme right dominate the conversation, making rational discussion difficult for those in the middle who have legitimate concerns. Sorry for the rant. I look forward to Veterans Day. Story 64. Considering that if a certain person wins, I lose my basic human rights, it is not discussed enough. I am tired of it being described as a difference of opinions. It is not a difference of opinions when one side wants to take my rights away. Story 65. As an American, I cannot even sleep. This whole situation has me worried. I just want it to be over. Story 66. Meh. It's to be expected. Personally, I have microwave popcorn ready for upcoming debates. Story 67. I'm not even American, but American politics is my favorite reality show. It's messy, it's dirty, it's full of drama. It's a complete disaster. I normally hate reality shows and cringe every time someone at the office talks about The Bachelor. But how are you not excited to find out that a potential vice president was involved in a scandal? Or that a sinister plan called Project 2025 is underway to dismantle all progress the United States has made since Franklin D. Roosevelt? Or that the Supreme Court has been heavily stacked in favor of a convicted felon? I'm eager as I type. Story 68. Not at all. This has been the most exciting few weeks in United States politics ever. Story 69. Not very much, since we do not actually hear about politics. It is one smear campaign after another. It is toddlers yelling nicknames at each other, and many fan bases are consuming it as if it were a delicious meal. Story 70. I am an American, and I am tired of hearing it. Every single subreddit, even niche ones that have nothing to do with it, are talking about it. I will keep up with it through an article online once a week or something. I do not need to see the same content every day. Story 71. I am tired of hearing about Donald Trump and his supporters. Hopefully, I will never hear about him again after the election, except for his sentencing. Story 72. I am not bored of it. As a United States citizen, it is important to stay informed and irresponsible to tune out. Apathy is complacency. Story 73. It is pretty easy to avoid the news, at least for me. I do not really hear much about it because I just listen to National Public Radio News on Alexa each morning, which only takes about 5 minutes of my day. I do not seek out news articles or watch cable news, so I am able to keep a healthy distance from it. Story 74. I love hearing about it. It's like a car crash you cannot look away from as you drive past. Absolutely fascinating stuff. As a non-American, I tend to go out of my way to check in on some of the crazy every now and again, on both sides before anyone gets upset. It's like a really great drama, complete with cynical characters and outlandish plot lines. Although it might have a somewhat predictable ending, the ride is certainly enjoyable if you are into the chaos of it all. Story 75. I'm just kind of jealous. Having politicians with energy and passion, and while probably all are corrupt, it isn't illegal and at least gives a point to debate. I'm from Germany. Story 76. I am waiting for a detailed article on how the administrators have been allowing automated bot conflicts to occur on Reddit. Story 77. As an American, yes, dear God, yes. Please let it end so I can have a peaceful life. Story 78. Last night I dreamt of Donald Trump stealing my keys. I am French, so obviously, I am beyond sick of it at this point. Story 79. I am not tired of United States politics, but I am very tired of Norwegian commentators discussing United States politics. I am a Norwegian living in Norway. Story 80. On the one hand, I dislike seeing it on every single subreddit I follow, including non-political communities and those that explicitly state politics is against the rules. On the other hand, watching the politicians of the self-imposed land of the free, home of the brave devolve into childish ramblings and primary school insults over who is better at golfing or other trivial matters is absolutely hilarious, and part of me wants to see what happens next. Story 81. I'm not. The rest of the world kind of sees it as a soap opera or something to watch. It is quite entertaining. Story 82. None, as an American history enthusiast, I am both accustomed to it and have long accepted that all the news about the election's significance is nonsense. Story 83. I hear a lot from American politicians, but I rarely hear about politics. Hearing them clearly explain their plans and policies would be very refreshing. Being honest about global issues would be appreciated. I want to know their actual views and policies regarding Ukraine, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, Gaza, climate change, and other important topics. Story 84. Not at all. I am tired of it constantly being a disaster for as long as I can remember at this point. Story 85. America created the 24-hour news cycle. Now they have created the 24-hour political news cycle. I struggle to remember a time when campaigns were limited in length. Story 86. Not really. It's my daily dose of entertainment. Especially from a European point of view, America and especially United States politics is just a trash television series. Story 87. It depends on how the conversation is going. If it is someone who believes a version of the propaganda, it is extremely grating and no thanks. If it is someone who understands things on a deeper level or is open-minded, we can probably talk for quite a while. Story 88. I love politics. This very old veteran would have fought for politics and still might. My weight is fine, you money-grubbing people. Story 89. So many lies have been told that I no longer trust any of the news or politicians. Story 90. Politics usually equates to negativity. If the government could focus on improving our lives rather than attacking sides, then I would not mind hearing about it often. Story 91. I did not see the level of complaining and moaning in 2016 when everything was focused on how horrible Hillary was. Please stop. Story 92. For a long time it was the most exciting, if infuriating, show on. From Finland, it seemed every day something alien and foreign happened. But after 2016, it became kind of weird and I'm hoping for a break and some regular plotting. This is all so exhausting. Story 93. Incredibly, I go out of my way to neither say nor hear anything about politics. I don't listen to the news, and I spend my time reading religious books or good literature to grow as a person. Talking about politics too much feels stunting, no matter what. Story 94. Like 4 or 5 unless they each give me money. Then I will support them, or a cat or puppy. Story 95. It depends on which part of American politics. I genuinely enjoy policy discussions, international relations, and similar topics. The culture war tactics that one group uses to create division and keep some people constantly angry and afraid should end. Hopefully, this election will put an end to that nonsense. Story 96. I have reduced my time on Reddit significantly because I no longer care. One side says the other side is wrong, and the other side says the first side is wrong. They are all refusing to use critical thinking and reason to support their claims. Just trust us because we are not the ones currently making mistakes. Seems to be an apt slogan for either side depending on the day of the week. Story 97. The fact that the American culture and political console war is spreading to my country is worrying. It has reached the point where my Instagram feed is flooded with ads urging me to tell Americans to vote. As if it is A, my sacred duty, and B, they are too incapable of doing it on their own. Story 98. Beyond. I'm actively avoiding it. I know who I am voting for. I really do not need an advertisement every 6 minutes on Hulu or YouTube. I just want to go somewhere and not hear about how candidate placeholder is going to ruin the country. Story 99. I am American, and this website is very harmful for politics. Story 100. I would rather jump off a bridge at this point. No, scratch that. I would rather push the next person who brings up toxic political talking points off a bridge or out a window. Edit. I do not care if it is Democrat or Republican. Defenestration is looking very attractive now. Story 101. Yesterday, my significant other was watching television and every other commercial was a political advertisement. We both also received 3 text messages and 2 pieces of mail related to politics. It is so over the top. Story 102. It would not bother me so much if most of the posts were organic, but almost all of them on the main subreddits are astroturfing bots or shills. I just want to talk to humans instead of being fed a constant stream of political propaganda. It is not as bad on smaller subreddits, but this entire site is infested with bots. It does bother me when threads in completely non-political subreddits get derailed into political arguments. Story 103. I am tired of both sides picking the smallest issue and making a story about it. The latest example was many stories about J.D. Vance walking his dog. It seemed fine to me. He was trying to get on a plane, going up steps, while holding an umbrella, avoiding getting wet, and holding the leash. I have a lot of experience with dogs, and this just seems unreasonable. Both sides do this, but this one stood out to me for its absurdity. Story 104. Not sick at all. The last 3 elections have been very important for the world. This election will decide much of geopolitics. Story 105. Yes, we are trying to stop the next Adolf Hitler. Maybe go for a walk or get a snack if it bothers you. I do not care. There are bigger issues to focus on. Story 106. Damn it. I thought this was one of my humor subreddits and clicked to see the punchline. Story 107. I would not mind if all our arguing and debating led to solutions and resolutions, but we have the same arguments and debates around the same issues all the time. Nothing really changes that much. It makes me think politicians cannot do much to fix problems, but they do not want us to know that. Story 108. I've been tired of it for years. My friend stopped speaking to his parents after they got divorced. He wasn't angry that they separated. They just spent so much time saying the other person was incompetent, greedy, and evil that eventually he decided both were right. That's pretty much how I feel about politics. Story 109. It's like watching 2 women brag about who has the most boyfriends and why the other one is promiscuous for having them, and they follow you everywhere. Story 110. I believe that I am intelligent enough to pursue politics and research policy decisions when I choose. I have always been capable of this. In today's world, we can easily find information about our government and see what campaigns are saying. I dislike politics being forced into every form of escape and entertainment. Do I need online communities and media lecturing me about politics during my own time or in the shows and movies I watch? I am capable of engaging with politics on my own. The politics imposed on us in online platforms and movies target the gullible, the young or naive, and easily influenced individuals, people who cannot distinguish between politics and entertainment. Story 111. I just got off a cruise ship. People were talking about Donald Trump while sitting in a hot tub in Bermuda. At every restaurant I went to, I could overhear someone bringing it up, usually to their spouse, who probably did not want that to be the topic of conversation, or to strangers. I swear nobody has an actual personality anymore. Story 112. It's a reality show. As an American, I've seen it coming for years, to be honest. It started with regular people, think Road Rules or Survivor. Then celebrities got involved as hosts or participants, which scored more ratings because celebrities. The need of the American people to objectify and criticize others is partly to blame. When they get tired of bashing or idolizing someone, they toss them away and move on. The only foolproof way to continue this revenue stream is to find people who are expendable but also ones that people can support. Politicians are picked by us, so they already have a built-in popularity factor. The powers that be just moved your reality shows from MTV, cable, and Bravo to mainstream media and call it news. The gullible public consumes it and spreads it onto the internet, and we get bombarded all day, which makes sense because it is actual government policy, action, and information, but it's pitched like entertainment. I hate how political everything has become. Can't we all just be nice, mind our own business, and stop criticizing each other's choices? I remember when you had a close group of friends who shared your views that you could share hot takes with. It really kept the extremists in the corner, where they belonged. Now we have people who believe nonsense and blatant lies with a platform to tell the world. I'm hoping after the election, things will slowly move back to somewhat normal, but thanks to the internet and certain polarizing individuals, I doubt this will change. We really need a cultural renaissance to have a meaningful change here. The summer after George Floyd's murder was close. People came out of the woodwork to let the country know that we aren't all ignorant and hateful. But again, it just faded into a political issue and got pushed down the feed. People need to stop consuming politics like entertainment and get actual personalities outside of Democrats and Republicans. Local news is all you really need, and any political information can be searched on multiple sources, which you should do anyway so you aren't getting a biased view. We need to stop propping up these old curmudgeons as demigods and start making them work for us instead of taking their word as gold. Story 113. I hate that we constantly seek attention as a country and try to make ourselves the center of everything. However, realistically, this year's election is genuinely crucial to our allies. We have a literal traitor running, and there are still a lot of people who support him. I would rather we do not withdraw from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and I would much rather not see the United States transformed into a dystopian society like Gilead. Story 114. Not at all. I am happy it is going against Donald Trump. Seeing unusual Donald Trump supporters cry about it is a bonus. Story 115. Sick enough to leave the top communities. Reddit thrives in smaller niche communities. The most popular ones are compromised. Story 116. We would hear about it less if we did not elect people like Donald Trump. I am saying this as seriously as possible. When you have to think about the president constantly, as we did from 2016 to 2020, that is a bad sign. Story 117. American here with major Donald Trump fatigue. I just want him to go away. I want politics to be boring again. Story 118. Use a service based in the United States that primarily serves Americans, and some may complain it is centered on American users. Story 119. It used to be every 4 years things would ramp up for a bit. Then Donald Trump showed up, and he has not stopped complaining for nearly 10 years. Story 120. I am tired of being angry all the time about politics, and I need to escape from it to stay sane. It is mentally exhausting when people cannot have a conversation without bringing it up. Story 121. Laughing out loud. It is August. You have months left still. Better leave Reddit. Story 122. Very tired of it. I live in the United States of America. We are in trouble no matter who is in charge. Story 123. I love hearing about politics, but I wish people would keep it out of discussion forums where it does not belong. I also wish much of the analysis were of higher quality. Story 124. Not sick enough to make posts complaining about it. Story 125. As an American, the past 3 political cycles have been incredibly draining. Sorry, world. Story 126. So sick of it. None of this will matter in 50 years because we will be dead. Some people are so obsessed with choosing sides and get so caught up in it that it takes over their lives. My motto is to enjoy life while you have it, be happy, focus on your family and friends, and do things you enjoy. Politics has turned very ugly and divisive and has taken a very different turn. It is comical how caught up some people get. Just enjoy life. Story 127. Not sick enough to stop talking about them. I would rather not wake up in an authoritarian nation. Story 128. I am French and watch it every day, as I have done every 4 years since 2012. The insanity is fascinating. This season is crazy and much more interesting than Netflix. I love watching The Daily Show talk about it, as well as Oliver. Fox News is incredible too. It seems they have completely divorced themselves from reality by now. Donald Trump's posts on Truth Social are something else. I can't understand how anyone would vote for him, but he is still pulling 43% somehow with a good chance to win. It is so different from how things are done in France that I cannot stop watching. I literally watched the whole Democratic National Convention this week and could not watch the whole Republican National Convention, to be honest, even if that Hulk Hogan moment was like something out of a fever dream. Kamala Harris feels like a better candidate than anything you have had for a while, and I really like her vice presidential pick, so I am rooting for her. Good luck with all that. Story 129. Many of my favorite online communities are being taken over. For example, wow, look at Oprah give a generic speech. Interesting. On average, there are several propaganda posts a day. Story 130. I genuinely could not care less. They are no longer the leaders of the free world. Their superpower was media, but the status quo was overturned due to the internet, regardless of what side people are on. Everyone agrees there is an inadequate buffoon who may take the seat at the head of the table. Story 131. I actually find it entertaining. It is literally the most important election. It affects the entire world. Story 132. I feel that the government should be like a referee crew at a game, keeping everything going in the right direction and on time, but you should not really notice they are there. I love waking up and not having to think about politics. Story 133. I think it is extremely important for everyone to be active. Voter apathy is how negative outcomes occur. Story 134. I am simply because there is nothing else to be learned from either major candidate, and everyone voting for the Democratic Party or the Republican Party has made their choice at this point. The mudslinging back and forth has become absolutely ridiculous, especially over the last 20 years. Story 135. As an American, I am so tired of it. I just want the ballot to arrive in the mail already so I can vote and send it in and be done with all this nonsense. Story 136. As an American who is heavily invested in politics and very knowledgeable about the political climate, I am exhausted. It is only going to get worse over the next few months. I cannot imagine being in your position, having nothing to do with your country, and having to see it all day every day. Story 137. I am so sick of it that I have become a supporter of Donald Trump simply out of spite. Story 138. This Canadian's perspective. I'm enjoying it, not so much the politics, but the humor. I severely dislike Donald Trump and only consume non-MAGA media. Watching the purported meltdown is very satisfying. However, I am keenly aware that close to 50% of American voters think it's all lies and consume exclusively MAGA media. It's like there are parallel worlds down there. I ignore 80 to 90% of the United States political news, focusing more on Randy Rainbow and other humor. United States politics have an impact on my country. Donald Trump was instrumental in rewriting a key trade agreement that was formerly NAFTA. I can't remember the new name. He has distinctly isolationist and America First policies. That will not help world peace or economic stability globally if he returns to power. So I worry about that. Story 139. I am never tired of hearing about American politics as a topic. It is a fascinating subject. What I get tired of is hearing about certain political figures as if they are serious people. Some of them are not serious, and it is tiresome to hear them discussed as if they are. Story 140. I love it a lot. It is my passion. Election year and all. Plus, my life is on the boring side. Sports and politics, the switch is life for me. Story 141. I think this election cycle could be the most important in my 60 years, so I am paying a lot of attention. However, I do have some politics-free places I visit daily. If I were Canadian, I would be tired of it as well. Story 142. We just watch television with the sound off when the news is on. Story 143. It does not matter how sick I am. If I do not fight the cultural conflict, no one else will. They think we can just ignore our problems until they go away, and that has worked about as well as you might expect. Story 144. I'm so tired of it that when anyone asks me about it, I automatically assume they are purposely looking for a fight. You don't want my opinion. You just want to tell me why I am wrong because you are convinced of your own superiority. Story 145. I live in a Democratic-leaning state. I visited a swing state last week. The number of yard signs and commercials is overwhelming. I could avoid it in my Democratic-leaning state. It is unavoidable in a swing state. Story 146. Yes, very much. I care about who wins because I want Ukraine to win the war, but I do not care about American domestic issues at all. Story 147. So sick of it. Our politics have devolved into cult-like worship of politicians, with few Americans understanding the policies their parties support. Story 148. Try living here. I envy other countries whose election campaigns last only a month or two, not 2 years. Story 149. Just keep reminding yourself, politicians are not people. They are tools. They are there to do a job. When they cease to be functional, throw them out and get some new ones. Story 150. I am American and therefore too unmotivated to learn another language and move somewhere else. Story 151. About the same as any other election cycle at this time of year. Story 152. I am from the United States of America and I am tired of hearing about our own politics. Story 153. American here. I'm sick of it. But with what is presently at stake with this election, I do not want to turn away from politics. Story 154. Politics is not fun anymore without consequences. Every politician just does whatever they want, and it generally gets erased and forgotten. People ask me about a political situation, and I have to spend 20 minutes refreshing the backstory before I give my strong opinion. It used to be things like a politician against gay marriage getting caught hooking up with men in a truck stop, which would ruin his entire career. These days, his party just spends another $175 million on propaganda, and the story disappears. Story 155. Original poster says, I am tired of hearing about American politics. Also, the original poster posts on a site owned by Americans, Advanced Publications, and mostly populated by Americans, 48%. Where is that shocked Pikachu face? Story 156. I shake my head sadly and feel happy I am a few thousand miles away. Story 157. It is an extremely consequential election for the world, so you are really going to have to endure it for a little bit. If the openly neo-Nazi endorsing white supremacists, racists, rapists, pedophiles, conmen, grifters, fascists, and oligarchs win, you will not have any silly pictures of cats on the internet to look at or talk about. Story 158. I am tired of hearing people complain on an American website when our democracy is at stake. Does that count too? Story 159. As an American, I feel like politics are futile and frustrating because a majority of our politicians are old, sweaty, white men who do not actually care about the country, even though they say they do and really just want money. I like to see candidates like Kamala, not really for her political beliefs. I am neither Democrat nor Republican, somewhere in the middle because they do not fit the cookie-cutter rich, snobby white male mold. However, at the end of the day, I still do not think many high-level politicians care about the greater good of the United States. Therefore, I do not enjoy seeing more than 20 Trump or Kamala news stories every night on the major news networks. Story 160. I understand the election for one of the most powerful positions in the world might attract intense attention, but I am tired of how United States politics dominate and overshadow other important issues. Most posts are superficial and presented as spectacles instead of in-depth analysis of policies. As someone not from the United States, I want to know how Kamala Harris manages the relationship between the two countries, not how she thinks about Donald Trump's second cousin. The whole election feels like a reality game show at this point, Big Brother White House edition. Donald Trump's new tweet or Kamala Harris's lunch photo dominates the news and social media. The Kolkata rape case, the ban on women's voices in Afghanistan, and the coup in Pakistan are all overlooked and pushed out of the news cycle. Story 161. I am sick of coverage treating it like a sports contest. Elections are about much more. Story 162. A large amount, mostly the smear campaigning and how everything is red versus blue. Story 163. Even Americans are tired of hearing about the elections repeatedly. Regardless, this is an important election that will impact global politics and ongoing conflicts. Story 164. Are you tired of it? Imagine us Americans, we have to live with it. Story 165. The political enmity is tedious, and the deification of their politicians is beyond fatuous. Worse still, I see more Reddit users behaving like petulant children than actual policies being discussed. Reddit is dominated by Americans, so I expect it to influence the entire site, yet it remains ubiquitous. I cannot escape religious and political fanatics who perceive themselves as the righteous vanguard of revolution. Story 166. Almost as much as hearing about Indian politics or British politics. Story 167. Needs to be a season regulated strictly. However, the undisclosed financial contributions flowing from billionaires to political action committees and, in turn, ending up paying for airtime will not stop on its own. Story 168. I try to tune out commentaries and read their policies online. I research items that need more details because often the devil is in the details. I dislike petty bickering, false accusations, and drama. I want to know what they will do to curb inflation, reduce food and energy prices, increase job wages, and stop funding military conflicts around the world to fight poverty here in the United States. Story 169. I'm American, and while I am fairly politically driven and feel strongly about voting, it has reached such an awful and toxic low point that I could never hear about our own politics again and be totally okay with that. I have not even bothered to tune into the news this election cycle because it is awful, and I already know who I am voting for, so I am not even bothering. I am much happier. I do not understand why other countries invest in it. I mean, I understand what happens here has implications around the world, but for the life of me, I cannot understand when people get involved to the point that the toxicity affects them. The insane QAnon American alt-right movement, which is like getting sucked into a conspiracy theory cult, has worldwide adherents now who do not even belong to this country, and that totally frustrates me. I do not get it. Just focus on your own politics because it will affect you more. It is okay to be mindful about what is happening in the United States of America because it affects many countries in many ways, but my best advice is not to let our insanely loud and often crazy drumbeat drown out the beat of what is happening around you. Story 170. This countdown of days to the election is ridiculous. Just vote. Story 171. I do not care which wealthy individual you choose to vote for. I completely lose my temper when people discuss politics. My husband and his mother quickly change the channel when political advertisements begin. Story 172. Depends on the level of intellect in the discussion. I like hearing knowledgeable people talk about it, especially about policy. However, when podcasts have an episode where they interview swing voters, I find it extremely uncomfortable. Swing voters are often some of the least informed voters in the constituency, and most of their complaints are short-sighted and poorly reasoned. Story 173. Not sick enough to start another tired thread about American politics. Story 174. I have been tired of hearing about United States politics for over a decade, and I am American. Not every little thing needs to be tied to politics. I really want this trend to end as quickly as possible. Story 175. Most people outside of the land of freedom do not care about what happens to these entitled racist bigots. I, for one, could not care less when many blessed American lives were lost in the September 11th attacks, which were directly or indirectly orchestrated by the Americans themselves anyway. Story 176. The Americans' fascination with their elected leader is childish and deeply anti-American. Story 177. Every time I think about politics and see people arguing about the other party, I remember George Carlin in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Don't be so suburban. It's the new millennium. Gay, straight. It's all the same now. Story 178. Every country has its own internal politics, and the United States has no right to interfere with them. Moreover, the United States demands support for its petty politics, similar to a dictator demanding unconditional support from the general population and threatening to use the military against anyone who dares reject their authority. No one outside the United States cares for the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Honest opinion. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.